when I'm writing, I'm not thinking about these people.
Sure.
Like, it just...
Who are you thinking about?
Like, the smartest, most attractive person that is about to dump me.
Okay.
If I'm not, like, just increasingly better and more fascinating, maybe?
Ciao, Ottessa. Welcome
Hi.
to Lucy.
Thanks for having me.
We are very honored to have you here. So we already met yesterday to talk about the McGlue, which is actually the first book, the first novel. It's actually a novella from Ottessa, and it's now out with Feltrinelli. But the first question today that I would like to ask you is about an essay that you wrote several years ago now during the Me Too era. But I'm not interested in the plot or the meaning of this essay, in which you tell the story of the moment when you were young and you really wanted to have this old man as a teacher, as a writing teacher. And since I read in other places that you said that you don't believe in teaching writing, I'm so curious, like, what did he teach you?
What did he teach me? Well, what was the most instructive? Okay, first of all, he told me the truth about my work, which is like something rare. I showed him just whatever, and he was like, immediately told me why it was really pointless and lame. And it was. People are just so nice that it's really hard to be honest with someone when they're being vulnerable. He exhibited to me a standard of what is interesting that I think is actually valuable. Like, most people don't know how much more interesting they could be if they pushed themselves to go even further. And so that was like something that I saw for the first time. And I was 17.
About going forward, you said in different occasions that when you write, you discover something about yourself. And I was wondering if you was ever struck about something that you discovered that you didn't know about yourself, or something that was particularly strange to discover during your writing.
Oh, the thing that comes to mind most recently, my last book, my most recent book, Lapvona. I mean, a lot of things surprised me. My ability to imagine a world that I'd never been in, I'd never seen, all of that was difficult and took effort. And then there were certain things that were really effortless, like my familiarity with this one character, was sort of the central character, Marek, the adolescent boy. And I had never made this kind of decision before, but I told myself at the beginning, okay, I want to put in Marek something about me. I exaggerated a little bit with Marek, but growing up, I developed scoliosis. It's like this, my spine is sort of like twisted and curved. And when I was little, I had to wear a brace and it was horrible. And, I decided not to get corrective surgery. And they always told me, it's not gonna kill you. This is just like skeletal. But when you're older, you might have some complications. And like, I'm definitely older and there are complications. So mostly it's just like what I experience is pain and it's chronic. But going back to when I was adolescent and, not even a grown woman, like developing, like my body was growing, seeing that it was growing in this way that was wrong was, a huge thing for a young person. And so I decided to make Marek have that deformity. And to see how, if I like really let him fully engage with his body in that way, what it would show me about maybe something that I don't want to connect to about myself.
Thank you for this answer. Staying in Lapvona, it's your first novel written in the third person. You said that you wrote it during the pandemic. And I was asking myself if the third person has a relation, like apart from, of course, the village and the thinking about society, but also the third person. I don't know, I intuitively feel it's connected to a feeling of being in the sort of same situation with a lot of other people and not feeling that your life is so unique in that moment. Is it something that resonates with you?
Absolutely, 100%. I think that suddenly the third person felt available to me, Because, I'm like most of us, I have some egotism. And especially as a writer, like you kind of depend on that because you need to make sure that your life contains experiences so that you can observe things. It is a very self-involved activity, writing fiction, in a way. But yeah, it was like all of a sudden my perspective shifted, like went from being here to being like there and looking down at the world, which was fascinating and humbling and scary. I also think there were other things that impacted that shift to third person. And partly it was like I wrote it during the lockdown where we were all trapped inside. And I really didn't want to be trapped in a single character. I wanted to be able to move freely through Lapvona as like a place and also be whoever I needed to be in that moment.
Lapvona, it's really one of, I don't know, for me, it's the greatest book you wrote so far. So
thank you.
Yeah. So that's another thing. In an essay you wrote that if someone asks you how to start writing something, you ask them, what's bothering you now? And then you don't remember okay. But it's a good answer. But the thing that was interesting for me is that afterwards you said, and then you think about a metaphor to put the discomfort in a metaphorical way. And your books are all very metaphorical. You don't talk about yourself in a realistic way. Of course, if all the things you write are very personal and intimate somehow, but you don't tell your life as it is, or you don't do autofiction. And this is something that I was asking myself about reading your books. Like, is this metaphorical thinking something that you came up with, like growing up as a writer, or since you were very young? Because I know that you started that like when you were very, very young, after you missed an application for a piano residence, you started writing there. And like when you were so young, did you already use this kind of metaphorical thinking to write your things?
No, and I have to say, like, I wouldn't call it metaphorical thinking.
Okay.
That's giving me like too much credit in terms of how much agency I have.
Okay.
I usually, and also I don't know myself that well. Or if I did, I wouldn't be this open about things. Like I don't, like writing a novel is, it is like it's very hard not to relate to what you're writing because it's coming from you. But I never think, there's this 1-to-1 ratio of like, this is a book about like a girl who doesn't really want to be awake. And that's just like how I don't want to XYZ. Not so clear, but I have always been extremely private and secretive. Even if I'm telling you everything, there's always, I feel like there's like some hidden real me there, like just behind me, making sure everything's okay. And so that feels like similar But
death is very present in your works, in McGlue, in Aileen, even in some way in My Rest Relaxation, in Lapvona, of course. And why? Have you ever thought about that? Like, is it deliberate, or it's something that you think about?
I think about it a lot. I mean, I didn't really understand how McGlue was engaging in the experience of mourning a loss. So in the book, it begins with McGlue kind of like waking up after being in a drunken blackout. He has no memory of doing it, but he has definitely just killed Johnson, his best friend, and we find out maybe something more or different than that. And so much of it is about him coming to accept that Johnson is dead, first of all, and then that he was the one who did it. I had never had that kind of experience with loss, nor had I really had it when I wrote Eileen or My Year of Rest and Relaxation, but both of those are about losing. I mean, in Eileen, she's lost her mother, and, she barely speaks about her, but we understand that in her mother's place, Eileen has had to stay to, take care of her father and be sort of foil. And in My Year of Rest and Relaxation, she also doesn't really get into her grief, but I think we understand that the position she's now in, having just lost both of her parents and inheriting the money that they've left her, has put her in a really difficult position, and that dealing with her grief isn't something she wants to do. And then it was just as I was finishing My Year of Rest and Relaxation, I started to have increasingly intense experiences with death. The rule of threes.
Yes.
It was such a rule of threes. It was like first one person, and then another person who was closer to me, and then another person who was even closer. And I had pondered such an experience, but I hadn't ever experienced such a thing. And it changed my entire life, So, yeah, death has felt much more present in my life since then. And deliberate or not, I think it's just maybe, I find it hard to conceive of a story in which there is no death,
Families in your books are a disaster. People feel either abandoned or constrained or not loved. For example, talking about McGlue, the interesting thing is that McGlue is actually, you can feel that, I can feel that, I as a reader can feel that you really love him, maybe more than, or in a different way than other characters that maybe you see in a more detached or maybe less maternal way or less loving, way. And he's in love with Johnson. And there is also his mother, who takes care of him when he's in prison. But their relationship is very rough, I'd say. And this is another thing that comes up a lot in your work. Is it also, my question is always the same, is it something that you think about it or that you thought about while writing?
The
family dynamics, and why there are so many issues in that department.
People sometimes ask me, why do I write so much about the body, like a character's physicality? And my answer is always I don't know anyone who has ever existed without a body. And I also don't know anyone who, I don't know anyone who comes from no one. Even if you're estranged from your parents, if you've never met them, you still understand that there were two people who came together to create you. That's really significant to me. And I think thinking about characters' family is crucial. Even if you don't mention any of it in the book, like, you need to understand what was this person's life like when they were growing up, because that's where your personality is kind of formed, right? It's like early childhood, how you relate to other people, what your patterns are, your delusions and your neuroses, like all of that you can find in like those first 3-4 years of your existence, and what your parents were doing and what they were doing to you. So that just feels really like the basic ingredients of understanding characters' psychology and how they would express themselves. And like everyone, my family has at times obsessed me, you know? Yeah.
I'm curious about how you are growing up as an artist, because you said many times that a lot of your books came also from, longing, or that they, like, done from discomfort, not having money, needing, to maybe, I guess, also exist in the world while growing up. And then at some point, that, if you're lucky, that moment in your life ends and you gain some sort of, stability, or, a balance, and also maybe have a family, whatever that means, but someone who's with you. And I was wondering if this kind of shift, how it impacts your writing, if it had an impact.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when you have time and space and the ability to control it, like, that's something. Especially if you're a writer. I mean, you need time and you need space, or you need some space. And for a long time when I was younger, like actually before I started writing novels, time was too expensive. And actually space was really expensive too. Wait, now I've forgotten what your question was. How did...
If it changed the quality of your life, since it became so different, I guess.
Yeah. It's really hard to measure those things, because at the same time, I'm also like in my 40s now. If I was single, renting an apartment in some random city, if I didn't have any attachments, would my writing be different? Yeah, because my life experiences would be different. My attention would be called to different things. But I think the idea of your life being more stable when you have like a home and a partner it's not like a foregone conclusion. It's not like, oh no, there are no more question marks. No, I have like so much anxiety. I probably have more anxiety now than I did in my 20s, in a way. In another way, I'm almost dead. So who the hell cares?
What about when you, like, what kind of relationship do you have with your past books? Because even if you don't talk about yourself, so moment of your life that are, recognizable for you and for the readers, there's a type of you there that...
Yeah.
So how do you feel being here, just promoting this book that you wrote so many years ago now?
I feel a little bit lazy, to be honest, because when I wrote McGlue, I had so much energy. And I had so much energy that writing the book was like a process of restraint, And now I'm like so tired all the time that I have to kind of inspire myself to be in a manic state in order to feel that way again, which isn't that hard. But I'm like, wow, I can't believe I could focus and do that hard work, because I couldn't write this book now. I mean, it would be a totally different book now. When I look at my past books, so most of my life I had like a lot of self-loathing. Like if I saw a picture of myself from high school, I'd be like, oh God, you know?
Yeah.
I feel differently now. Like I have better relationship with myself and I love myself, etc. But always when I would look back at a book that I had written in the past, it was like I could love that person and I can appreciate that she made that and that it was meaningful, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I get this. So this is maybe a speculative question, I don't know. But you said that for you, writing is kind of also hearing the music of the sentence. And I was wondering if this has any connection with actually your relationship with music and how also that relationship evolved in time because you were a classical pianist.
Yeah. I think listening is really an underrated skill. And I was a really quiet child up until I was a teenager. I didn't talk a lot. I wasn't the kind of kid who would talk about her thoughts and feelings and want to have conversations. I remember I used to sing a lot. Like that was sort of how I expressed myself, but I didn't really start engaging in conversations with other people.
You sang like your own songs?
Yeah,
you
I
made
would
them
just
up?
be like singing up. Yes, I used to do that all the time. So I think that was sort of how I got to know what thinking was like a song or something. And then when I started talking to other people, I could kind of recognize that I had this experience of becoming really good at observation and listening because I had kept my mouth shut for so long. And I still try to do that. I mean, it's not as easy now, and I'm way more selective about what I observe. But I think listening and music, yeah, I mean, it's also music you could think of as just a paradigm, right? Like you could say that anything that we listen to is music, like the music of this room and like the people breathing. You could listen to that, you know? And I studied music really intensely when I was growing up, and I played different instruments, like studied solfège. Like I had a private solfège teacher for like at least 15 years. No, like 10 years. By the end of high school, I was like, we were singing all the different parts of like this Mozart string quartet, like all of them. I mean, it was insane. And then like analyzing the music. It was an education. I mean, in melody and dynamics and harmony, like sound, voice, all of that stuff. I mean, it definitely I definitely took all of that with me into writing fiction, and had always been a really voice-driven author. Now, maybe not so much.
Staying with the music, like you at some point told when you discovered Nirvana. Yeah. And you said that for you that was exceptional because Kurt Cobain managed to make the ugliness beautiful and bring it to the mainstream. I don't know, I thought about the fact that My Year of Rest and Relaxation is set before 9/11. And in a way, it's like at the end of an era, even culturally. So I would like to know about how do you feel the cultural environment now? The fact that, for example, at least in Italy, the underground, it's somehow non-existent, or it wants to become mainstream very much.
Yeah.
And so that's different.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It is really different. At the same time, when I think back to the 90s and the kind of music that felt like radical and deep, already then it was being corrupted by the mainstream. I mean, that was kind of like what Kurt Cobain was so obsessed with, like his journals. I mean, they're all about his struggles as a artist living in a capitalistic system. And he's always just bitching about, this manager, this promoter, this record executive or whatever. And I don't know. So I'm not quite sure how much is different now, but the fact that we have the internet has, I think, accelerated the process of something unique and original being created by an artist, getting co-opted by culture in order to appeal to people to sell things. And I think that's just kind of the way it works. Like I've seen with My Year of Rest and Relaxation, like that cover of that, I feel like has now been influential on the way that other people want to design the covers of their books. I think that her, the protagonist's attitude is somehow now feels like it created a zeitgeist or something, but it didn't. I was just describing what was already there. And now, because it's accessible to people, it's a reference point. And that's how culture gets built,
Yeah. But this is actually, I didn't think about, how was it for you? Like now you're the My Year of Rest and Relaxation. I see it every time I open TikTok, or it's like it became something really big. And all the girls are, referring to that as some sort of a iconic book. How was that for you?
Well, I remember writing the book, and I remember certain page, being on a certain page and having this feeling like, oh shit. Not because I was like, oh, this is the best book in the world, but I kind of had this feeling that I was accessing something that was going to be much bigger than what I was doing.
Okay.
So I had a lot of faith in the book.
Okay.
And I thought when the book first came out in 2018, that it had a really big and positive reception. People were interested in it, and then life was going to proceed. But the COVID pandemic really shifted the series of events, because everyone found themselves stuck inside reading books because we didn't have enough. We all ran out of Netflix content.
Sure.
Reading books, and this book that was about someone who never leaves the house was relevant in a new way, and people, especially young people, were discovering it for the first time. So it had this second generation of coming out. That is a very, very, very unfortunate blessing for me, because it's connected me to so many more readers, but for kind of a terrible reason.
What kind of relationship do you have with the readership? Because it's theoretically, it's great, but then maybe sometimes when you then meet for real all the people, it can also be overwhelming a bit.
Well, I can say that when I'm writing, I'm not thinking about these people.
Sure.
It just...
Who are you thinking about?
The smartest, most attractive person that is about to dump me.
Okay.
If I'm not just increasingly better and more fascinating, maybe.
Okay. Good answer.
So somebody who's way smarter than me.
Okay.
Not that I think my readers are stupid at all. I don't.
No, of course.
I have two nieces. One is 12 and one is almost 18. And being an aunt, because I don't have any children, I understand now. I have a lot of affection for young people. If you ask me, do you have affection for people? No. People are terrible. But young people, oh, for sure. They're the best. I love them. Because they're, I don't know, I mean, yeah, they're innocent.
Yeah. Now in Italy, the movie from Eileen will be out in like a few weeks, and you worked on the screenplay, and afterwards you continued to work on screenplays.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask you about this new job, specifically with Eileen, but also if you are, I don't know, maybe scared that writing screenplays, since it's such a different kind of writing, could affect your novel writing.
Scared? No, because it's obvious that it's going to happen.
Okay.
You know, anything that I'm doing is going to affect my writing in fiction, but I enjoy the impact that screenwriting has had, because screenwriting is something that did not come, like I didn't spend decades preparing to write my first screenplay. Someone was like, do you want to write a screenplay? Yeah, that sounds so interesting and challenging. And then I just begun. So I had to find my own approach by doing it, you know? And also, I mean, I don't think that the relationship between cinema and literature is really necessarily bad. I mean, okay, if I was writing like schlock, like Hollywood nonsense garbage, yeah, you know, maybe my writing would throw me off balance or something. But I could never do that because I have like sort of a weak stomach for that sort of stuff. But, you know, already I was writing, my work has always been influenced by cinema. Like Eileen is totally influenced by Hitchcock's adaptation of the Daphne du Maurier novel, Rebecca. So adaptation and creativity and all that kind of stuff, I think it's somewhat all, you know, swimming in the same ocean. And writing for cinema has definitely impacted me. I mean, I think, you know, about the third person in perspective in Lapvona, that I think was also influenced by my work in screenwriting.
Okay, sure. So I heard Bret Easton Ellis' podcast in the episode where you were his guest. And also I read things you wrote about Less Than Zero. And so first of all, I wanted to ask you if, did you read Less Than Zero when you were very young? Or
No.
No? And also, so what kind of effect did it have on you when you read it? And also if there are any other, you know, older writers in the US or in general in the world with whom you have a relationship and also an admiration for, and who are them?
Yeah, I actually didn't read Less Than Zero until the UK publisher asked me to write the introduction. I had read American Psycho and was really influenced by American Psycho. At that point, I had never read a book like that. I didn't know that a book could be that. Less Than Zero was also terrifying in a way. Not because of what happens in the story, but the way that narrator is able to like create a feeling of the void, you know, like the vacuous emptiness of the soul is amazing. I mean, it's like something that's being transmitted almost. You could probably pick it out in the writing, but it's such a beautiful book. I would never want to do that. I mean, I like any book that astonishes me because it's something I couldn't think of or couldn't have imagined, you know? Yeah, that's Less Than Zero is an amazing book. I have some friends who are novelists, and I find them amazing. I mean, one of my best friends in LA is the novelist Rachel Kushner, who I consider to be like an incredible genius. not just reading her work and understanding her trajectory, but knowing her while she's writing, and knowing a little bit about, like, if we talk, what are you doing? Like, how's this work? How's your work going? You know, understanding what her process a little bit is really fascinating. So I appreciate those kinds of friendships, because it can be really lonely. I mean, like, writing a novel is very lonely.
Ottessa, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a beautiful chat, and you can find McGlue nelle librerie. Adesso posso parlare di nuovo italiano. Grazie.
Lucy.